today we are not going to discuss about any particular piece. We have done the queen, we have done bishops, knights, and rooks and whatnot. Let's discuss the weakest of them all. Let's discuss pawns today. So the video is going to be divided into three parts. Uh, it's three parts of chess as well. The opening, the middle game, and the end game. In the opening, we'll discuss how to spread out the pawns in the best possible way in the beginning of the game. The middle game would be about how to use these pawns, when to exchange and when not to, in the middle of the game. And the end game would be really interesting because sometimes pawns are all you have. There are no wide moving pieces, no long range pieces. And then the game goes in a very calculative manner. So we'll discuss that as well. So here's something about the strengths of these pawns. These pawns, although they look identical, they have identical powers, but they are not really identical. For example, look at this pawn, the pawn right in front of the king. How many pieces defend it? One knight, one knight, one bishop, a king, queen defends this pawn. But on the other hand, look at this particular pawn. Only the rook defends it. So, whenever like I'm sure you must have realized it that the more supporters for a piece, the harder it is to kill that piece. So, for example, if let's say this particular knight was at this position, it would not really dare to touch my e pawn, right? But if the knight was in my g file, and especially at the square g4, it is relatively easy to take the pawn on h5. Why? Because let's say just one more piece. Let's say this bishop was on the d6 square. Then there are two pieces attacking this pawn, and they could have easily taken it. So yes, the strengths of these pawns vary. So the strongest pawns are the central pawns. Why? Because both the central pawn are defended by four different pieces, whereas the weakest are the a file, h file, and the f file pawns. I mean, of course, the all the other pawns are defended by just one more pieces. But look at it, uh, and like this, the pawn on the f5 is defended just by the king, and that is really risky. Because if you can't like, let's say there are just two more pieces here, so the king can't even take back. It would be a checkmate. It would be a smaller kind of checkmate, and that is really popular in the form of scholar's mate. I'm sure you have seen it. So yeah, all the other pawns except the central pawns are defended by just one more piece, and that is why they are lesser powerful. But the king's pawn on the f file is the least powerful because it is really risky to even move this pawn. This move is really bad. Why? Because it's opening this file. So yeah, this pawn is really important and one should defend it. So let's now start finally with the game. How do you think, like, why are openings really important in terms of the pawn structure? Because pawns are what make the castle out of your game, right? For example, let's say I make this move, white makes this move, and I, for something, I decide to move d3. Now, this is a really good structure, but it blocks my bishop from coming out. On the other hand, if instead of d3, I would have gone for, let's say, d4, then although my bishop is open, but that the diagonal that you saw is not really there. So yes, different moves give you different kinds of advantages. The diagonal is a really good advantage in itself. I want you to have a look at this structure. In this structure, you can see that one pawn is supporting the other at all points of time. So whenever my opponent has to, try to come inside this, like look at this half of the board. Uh, no bishop can really cross it. Of course, the light squared bishop can cross it, but the dark squared can't really attack any diagonal on my side of the board, on the queen side of the board. Also, if one wants to destroy this pawn structure, they can't really attack this pawn or this pawn or this pawn. Not with pawns, of course, because of course black could make this move and ask me to trade it. But with a more valuable piece than a pawn, they can't really attack me on this square, this square, this square. They'll have to attack me on this square. So essentially, I just need to defend one square, and all the other squares with pawns are defended. Also, look at how many squares are they controlling. They are controlling this, this. Uh, Like multiple squares are controlled by an entire chain of pawns. So a chain of pawns is really good. Now look at this position. Um, I mean, of course, white is losing here because I just sacrificed a pawn. But I want to show you something else. Let's say that black decides to take this pawn with the pawn instead of the knight. Why is taking with the pawn bad? First of all, you are neglecting the development of a piece. You have free chance to take a pawn and develop your piece, but you are just deciding to take the pawn, not developing your piece. That is still fine. But what is not fine is this thing. Two pawns stacked back to back. Now, these are really bad. Why? Because you can't move this unless you move this. Also, there is this thing is not even defended by it. It's freely hanging, and this is also freely hanging. Like for example, this is defended by this and this, right? But there is no pawn defending this. There is no pawn defending this. Pieces are defending the pawns, and whenever pieces defend the pawn, they are not as strong defense as the pawn itself. Because here's the thing: the lesser value a defending piece. A defending piece is one which defends the other piece. So the lesser value a defending piece has, the more strong that defending piece is. Because I don't mind getting a pawn killed versus how much I would mind getting a bishop killed, right? So yeah, this structure is really bad. They are called doubled pawns. You should prevent them in a game, but yeah, if you're getting something for free, take it with risks calculated. So another thing, now this is not really related to the opening, but rather the game itself. Uh, like as a beginner, whenever I used to play, whenever someone offered me a point of exchange, I used to simply exchange. I didn't care. But I want to tell you that the option of not exchanging always exists. Often we forget that we can choose not to exchange a piece, right? Like, for example, I have offered black my D pawn. Black can simply ignore it. It's fine. The game doesn't really change by ignoring it. But as white, also, I don't really need to take this pawn, although it is really beneficial to take this pawn at this stage because it's a free pawn, because I moved the knight. I could have, let's say, I moved this. Even then, I don't really need to take this pawn. It is fine if I make this particular move as well. It's actually good, in fact, because I have changed the structure. I could move f3 in the next move, and I'll have a really long structure of pawns. So yeah, exchanging always is not really an option. Now I'll explain. Okay, so now let's start with the middle game strategy. Uh, so basically, let's look at this position. You are playing as white, and you want to decide what pawn to play with. So, for example, you could take this pawn with either of them. But as we have discussed, that central control is more prominent than the flank side control. So it is suggested that you take it with the f pawn. Why? Because now you have your central pawns as well as you have your open book file. So these two things are simultaneously advantages. So yeah, that's the first step. Whenever the opportunity to take with the central pawn or to take with the flank one, take it with the flank one. Okay. So here is step number two. So this is not exactly how do you play with your pawns, but also how do you defend yourself from the opponent's pawns. So this pawn at this position f5. Okay, wait a minute. Yeah. So let's consider this scenario. This pawn at position f5 is really dangerous for us. Why? Because now it has two defended squares. So if any of the black piece lands here, it is very difficult to kill it. Why? Because as we discussed, that the smaller, the lesser the value of the supporting piece, the more support it provides because you can easily trade this one off. So in this scenario, the black knight can easily come here, and it will be really difficult to push him off because we can't even kill this pawn. It's here. So yeah, whenever such positions are there, try to trade it off. Of course, not in this point because the queen is here or something. But usually we try to trade it off so as to not create these weak squares. So I'll just tweak the scenario a little bit, and now let's consider some really different situation. It's white to move right now, and there are a lot of things that white needs to defend, but there is one particular move. This black pawn pushing forward is actually risky for us because the closer the opponent pawns to my king, the more problematic it is. So usually, we should always block the pushing pawn with arm. Why? Because this is the only piece that can really cross about it. We could do it with the bishop as well, but bishops have different problems. The knight is usually the best in such scenario. The rook won't really do anything because it's blocked. So yes, whenever a possibility presents itself, we do block the promoting pawn. So that will help really help in the middle game. Of course, the last thing also we discussed in this thing board, it is this double pawn structure. This is really bad. Like, of course, I just told you that this position for black was good or bad. They are in different perspectives. Like, I'm not really analyzing the situation entirely, but I'm just telling you. Like, whenever you have double pawns, these are weak structures. It is not really weak right now, but usually whenever the pawns are like these, this is not really useful. We have discussed in the opening as well. So whenever possible, trade such pawns off, create a chain across diagonals, or rather keep them in at least separate files. And the pawn is really bad. All right. So now let's begin with the endgame thing. Uh, here's the so we'll just divide it into three different sectors. The first one will be the basic, the really standard part of it. For example, you can see the board right now. Now, do you think white can win the game even if it's white to move first? Okay, so of course you could do the basic calculation of this pawn push. How many moves is it taking for the pawn to come there, and how many moves is it taking for the king to come there? And you'll realize that the white is losing because the king will be in time. So, for example, let's say he goes here, I go here, he goes here, I go here, he goes here, I go here, he goes here, and I go here. You can see that okay, he was losing, but it's just a short trick to make calculation more simpler. That trick is that you can count the number of squares from here to here, and you can make an entire square out of it. And if you think that if you see that the opposition is inside the square, then you are losing. So for example, if black was here, then you were winning. Why black won't reach in time to stop this pawn push. You can even count that. So yeah, there is that, but this was pretty trivial, right? We'll have more advanced examples than this and a much more complicated situation than this one. Okay, so let's look at this side of the board. You can see that the white king can reach in time to kill this pawn, and the black king maybe or may not be able to reach here. But like as white, what I can definitely have one plan. Oh, let's take this pawn first, and then like even if white was a little ahead. Okay, so let's say white was here. Now it is my plan. Okay, let's just start counting squares. So it is one move, two move, three move, four move, and five move. And it is one move, two move, three move, four move, and five move. In five move, he'll reach here. By that time, I would have taken the pawn. So you can see that white can really take the pawn. But should white do this particular set of moves? So what is your answer? Should white make this set of moves? Well, if your answer is no, you are correct. Because you can see that even if I take that pawn, the black king will reach to my pawn, and the game would be a draw. But there is one tactic to win this set of game. And that tactic is in fact used in a lot of other games as well. And that is to, you know, kind of okay, I would make it equivalent to a shoulder push in football. So what you do is even if some other player is playing, it is your responsibility as the defender to not let the other players get closer to my player who has the ball. So what I'll do is I'll try to push my opponent with the shoulder. So that's what I'm going to do as the king. The king is here is the one who will shoulder push. And how I'll do it is I'll come to this square. So you can see that in one, two, three moves, I can come to this square, and in one, two moves, the black king will come to this square. But since it's my move first, eventually what will happen is the situation will be like this king is on this square and this king is on this square. You can count that out. Now, every time the black king tries to go up, we'll just go up with him. We'll keep pushing him to the shoulders so that, he can't really come across me. All he has to do, like whenever he tries to go up and, try to flank around me, I'll just defend him. I'll just stop him from going anywhere. And once I realize that I am close enough, I can do this. That like at this particular move, I know that the black pawn cannot escape. Wherever he moves, I just come here, and the next move reset. So now is only when uh, I can move my pawn, and if black king decides to flank even more, well, you know what I have to do. I can just come here. And I still won't take it because it's not necessary to take it. I can still push it, and what happens next is something we'll discuss ahead in the video, because that is even a slightly more tricky concept. So yeah, once you realize that you have taken it, then I'll show you how to play the next part of the game. So this is a position you will see a lot, especially in the theory part of chess, because it really happens a lot. Because imagine you are playing with someone equal to your level, then you know that it will only be a pawn or some sort of advantage, and that's all you have to win the game. So, for example, if you are playing the game and you have just a pawn, then do you think this game is a draw, or do you think you can still win it? Uh, The answer is that it depends. It depends on whose move it is. And it is even contradictory to what you might imagine. So yeah, let's make you think a little bit. Tell me, if it's white to move first, is white winning? Or if it's black to move first, is white winning? So if you answered that if it's white to move first, then white is winning, then you are pretty wrong. The answer to the question is if it's black to move first, it is only then when white can win the game. So, so before even explaining you how do you win this game, I'll just tell you a definition. So the definition is of opposition. So what opposition really means is that the king must face the king with one square in between. Whenever such a position comes up, it is called opposition. Now, what you ideally want to do in a single pawn endgame situation. What you ideally want to do in a single pawn endgame situation is you want to create opposition by moving your piece. So, for example, if let's say the white king was here, all I want to do is make this move. And once I make this move, I have created opposition. And okay, so let's assign this with positivity. If I create opposition, I am winning in a single pawn in game and in particularly situations like this. There is also a twist. The pawn should be in the b to g file, not in h to a file, and we'll discuss that later. But for now, if the pawn is in b to g file and you have this situation, what really happens? So when you have created opposition, you can see that you have blocked these three squares for black king to come forward, and the black king can do only only two or three of these moves: this, or this. Now, whenever the black king decides to do this, what your king is doing is trying to create an escort path for your pawn. So, of course, in the starting of the game, the pawn was the one that escorted or that held the king. But at this point of the game, the king is the one that will help the pawn. The roles have changed. So, so let's say, for example, the black king decided to move to e5. What will you do as white? You will simply blank out. Next, what can the black king do? Can he come here? No, I'll just give him a check and he'll have to go back. So usually what black king might or might not do is go back. Again, what was your principle? Be the one who creates opposition. So you are the one who created opposition, and push the black king back like that. Even in a scenario when you know, you might think, okay, he went here, I go flank here. He went here, I go flank here. What if he went back? So the answer to that is just create the opposition again. That's the one rule that you have to follow. Create the opposition. What is the other rule that you have to follow? The other rule is that never let your pawn pass the king. So, for example, if a situation like this, and black king decides to go here, you don't move b4. What have we learned? We have learned that the king escorts it. So let the king be ahead of it. Let the pawn be behind. That's all you have to make sure. And if you make that sure, then you can realize that pawn to d3 is in fact a better move than pawn to d4. So you can move this. But what you usually do is you push the king forward, create really a disadvantageous situation for black. And so once you have realized that, okay, the path is escorted, then you push the pawn forward. And the game will go on like this. If he decides to come here again, you again create opposition. Wherever he goes, you flank out. You don't let him come here. Okay, even if you imagine that, okay, black came here, then you can push the pawn. Black came more ahead, you can get support from the king. So yeah, this is what I'm trying to show. This is what will happen even if black decides to try threatening my pawn. So he'll usually go still behind. You can still come in opposition. You can still go behind. This will happen. And you can see that uh, even right now, the black won't try to come ahead. Even if he comes ahead, you can push the king back for some safety or something. But that was it. That was the entire point of telling you the single pawn endgame. And once this thing happens, you can see that uh, black can do absolutely nothing to stop my pawn because the king has already safeguarded the square. There is no path for him to go away. You can see that in the very next move, uh, it will be a queen. Of course, you know how to win a queen in game much better than how to win a pawn in game. But yeah, that was it. Uh, Now, once you have learned this, can you actually tell me why the pawn being on the A or the H file is a draw situation no matter what happens? Like, of course, the king is in the range, the king is in the square. So, for example, if the white pawn is here, okay, yeah, on square number two, the square becomes very different. The square becomes more like a little rectangle. Why? Because you know that the pawn can push two steps in a single move. So yeah, there is that. That's pretty trivial. But yeah, let's imagine the White King was, even if he was here and the Black King was here, do you think you can really push the pawn? You can never. Why? Because let's say the Black King was here. All right. Let's say you came here and he came here and you decided to give opposition as far as is. Black King went here. What was the next move that we made? The next move that we made was blank. But blank where? There's no square here. So no matter what happens, no matter what you try to do, if he decides to sit in this square, you cannot push him out of this square. The game is absolutely dropped simply because you don't have an extra file to go to. So that was it for today, guys. If you want to watch more such content, subscribe to Chess Gaja. And if you want to watch anything in particular, please drop a comment below and we'll definitely make a video on that topic.